That's what they call a hypercube. It's a fourth dimensional square. So math, as it turns out, has no problem with extra dimensions. You and I don't think about it like this, but math has no problem with it. I'm going to give you a little illustration. We're going to start. Here we go. Okay. So I just brought a little jar from home. And this is a three-dimensional jar. Okay, everybody with me on 3 dimensions, right? It has height, it has width, and it has depth, right? 3 dimensions, no problem. Okay. So 3 dimensions is all that we're used to. You can count time if you want, but let's just talk space. So three dimensions. That's, as far as we know, everything's that way. But for math, there's no reason for the universe to be 3 dimensions. In math, they can add a 4th or a 5th or a 6th dimension. The string theorists, in order for their theory to work, there has to be 10 dimensions, or the math doesn't even work. Fun fact. So who knows if they're making it up or not? I don't. Not nearly smart enough. But I'm just telling you the math, there's no reason to. So the computers can draw 4-dimensional objects or 5-dimensional objects, no problem. You and I just have trouble looking at them because our eyes see in 3 dimensions, right? Okay. So, do you go ahead and dim the lights for me here? So here's a fun little experiment, right? If we take our 3-dimensional object, and I have a really bright light here, and so I'm going to shine my light through my 3-dimensional object, and we're going to make a shadow of it, but this shadow is effectively 2 dimensions. You all see that? We've deleted a dimension by making it a shadow, right? Here's a 3-dimensional object, but the shadow no longer has any depth. It has height and width, and that's it. Everybody with me so far? You just want to say that, so we'll keep moving. Okay. So, we can take a 3-dimensional object and we can put it in a 2-dimensional space. But you'll notice that if I rotate, and that kind of looks fine, but if I start to rotate the object, it does some weird stuff, doesn't it? That shape, you can imagine for a moment, and bring the lights back up for a second, Nate, if you don't mind. You can imagine for a moment that if all you had was 2 dimensions, just the drawing, if I was trying to draw this jar for you, then it would depend a lot on which perspective I drew it in about what you would think about this 3-dimensional object. And then as I rotated it, you would think, I'm changing the drawing. But I'm not changing the object. I'm just rotating the perspective that you're looking at it in the 2-dimensional space. Okay? All right. We're almost there. The hypercube, if you could put that back up there, Nate, the hypercube, that is a shadow of the 4-dimensional object. Just like I took this 3-dimensional object, and by making a shadow of it in 2 dimensions, what you're looking at is a 3-dimensional shadow of the 4-dimensional object. That's why it looks weird as it rotates, because you just can't you're only looking at the shadow of it. Now, the Bible tells us that there is another dimension that we don't naturally observe. It's the spiritual dimension. It's where your soul is. So it's hard at this 4-dimensional object because when we talk about, if you're a 2-dimensional object, up and down we understand, left and right we understand, but how would you explain depth? If you're trapped on this flat board, you can point up and left and right and down, but you can't point that way, right? Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. This is very real. It's just that if you're trapped in 2 dimensions, you can't point this way or backwards. Yes? For us 3-dimensional types, we have a similar problem. There's no mathematical reason there can't be a 4th or 5th or however many dimensions you want, but we can't point that way. That's what the math says. What does the Bible say? That your soul's in you, but you can't point at it. Heaven's up, but not up in a way you can point. What's the Bible say about the tabernacle and the temple and the things that we experience? That they are shadows of the true thing. In John chapter 14, Jesus, the light of the world, is trying to help us understand, trying to help his disciples understand something about the nature of God. God is not ephemeral or ghostly. He's much more real than you and I are. In fact, this world is the world of shadows compared to the real world. And so Jesus here is taking his light and trying to help us understand some things about God. And in this chapter 14, he's going to kind of rotate it around a little bit and look at it from different angles. And as he does that to you and me in two dimensions, it kind of starts to look like contradictions. It's like, hey, he's changing the shape of it. He's not changing the shape of it. He's trying to help us look in a direction that it's very difficult for our brains to look.